Hello, welcome on in. Today I wanted to ask you, have you ever suffered from a condition that ends in itis? So itis at the end of a condition. Because the itis is indicative that there's inflammation in the body, and this will tell you that if you've ever suffered from inflammation. So conditions like dermatitis, gingivitis, cystitis, tendinitis, bursitis, tonsillitis, all of those conditions all have the letters itis on the end, and that means there's an inflammatory response going on in the body. But what I wanted to talk about today is the difference between acute inflammation and chronic inflammation and how it can be devastating to the body. So we need a level of inflammation at certain times of the body. So the indicator that there's inflammation or acute inflammation in the body is redness, swelling, pain, and heat. So if you have tendinitis, you sprain an ankle, you trip over, you sprain your ankle, you get swelling, you get heat, you get redness, and you get pain, right? Same as if you cut your finger. You'll get inflammation happening, and that's to help to activate the immune system. The immune cells come in, they fight the bacteria that could be entering the bloodstream, and that also creates a cascade to help the healing of the tissue, the damaged tissue around there as well. So acute inflammation is great to help with the healing of the body. However, if inflammation becomes chronic or long-term, then it can create destruction and damage to the body. But how do you know if there's long-term chronic inflammation in the body? Well, any disease condition, if you've been diagnosed with any disease condition, then you've got chronic inflammation in the body, because chronic inflammation is the driver of disease. So we need to make sure that if you have got any disease condition, any label of a disease, then we're looking at chronic inflammation and needing to turn it off. But chronic inflammation, we don't have the pain, the redness, the swelling, and the heat so clearly as acute inflammation. Chronic inflammation has more non-specific symptoms. Those non-specific symptoms are things like brain fog, roving muscle aches and pains, joint pains, fatigue, tiredness, I've already said brain fog. All of these can indicate that there's some kind of inflammatory reaction going on in the body. But they're also very non-specific. I mean, headaches could be another one as well. They're non-specific. So the question is, how do you know if you've got chronic inflammation? There's a few ways that we can find that out. But first I wanted just to give you a bit more of an understanding between acute inflammation and chronic inflammation, in case you don't quite get what the difference is and how acute inflammation is good for us and chronic inflammation is destructive. So let's think about a bushfire scenario, or let's think about a fire scenario. So I grew up on rural property, and in the lead up to summer each year, we would get all the dense undergrowth and do backburning. So we'd burn off all the dense, dead undergrowth to help to renew the nature, renew the grasses, renew the trees underneath, and help with the natural cycles of nature. But it would also create a barrier so that if a bushfire came through, our property would be more likely to be spared by the raving bushfires that were going on. So think of acute inflammation as being that backburning. It's controlled, it's short-lived. We put it out at the end of it. We always made sure that there was no cinders left, that it couldn't take off to become anything else. But chronic inflammation is like a bushfire. It's like someone's come in and poured petrol onto that fire, and all the bushfires got away. The winds have whipped up and pushed the bushfire away, and it's taken off over the hills. And we've seen that happen here in Australia in the last few years, where we had devastating bushfires across much of Australia. So think about those bushfires as being chronic inflammation. There's damage, there's destruction. It's a little bit overwhelming for nature in that it takes longer to do the repair processes, and it kills a lot of the natural native flora and fauna around as well. So think about that as chronic inflammation in your body. If you've got chronic inflammation and it's uncontrolled and it keeps continuing, then it can create destruction, and it's not helping the healing processes of your body, but instead it's undermining your body, increasing your nutritional needs, and slowing down your healing response. So that's what we're looking at. A controlled backburning bushfire is more of an acute inflammation, whereas the out of control bushfires are more like the chronic inflammation. So we need to be able to get it back into control again. And the way to work out if you've got chronic inflammation in the body is through some testing. So we can do testing, we can have a look at the blood to see if there is any inflammatory markers. We can do it through live blood screening or a blood screening process. We can also look at pathology markers, so testing for specific indicators like high sensitive CRP, ESR, fibrinogen, homocysteine, and the interleukins, especially interleukin 6. So these are all chemicals that we can test in the blood in a pathology setting to see the level or the intensity of the inflammation that's going on and monitor how it goes down. And so if you have been diagnosed with any disease condition, then that's also another indicator that there is chronic disease in the body. So it's about having a look into what's happening. And then we can also look at the genetics, and we can do genetic testing to see if there is any genes or how the genes in your body are more likely or have a propensity to do what they do and create inflammation. So we can test for the genes that reduce inflammation, and we can test for the genes that increase inflammation to see if there's an anomaly or a hiccup with any of those, and so that it increases your risk of chronic inflammation. So there's a few ways that we can have a look at with that. But if you do have a disease condition, if you do have chronic inflammation, what can you do? We desperately need to control chronic inflammation to turn off disease. Like I said, all disease has an inflammatory process to it. And so to conquer disease, we need to turn off these inflammatory chemicals. And to do that, we need to look at the diet. First and foremost, the diet. What are you eating? Are you eating in foods that create inflammation or trigger the genes to create inflammation? So things like your saturated fats, your trans fats, the sugars, alcohols, they all increase inflammation. But then there's diet regimes like the anti-inflammatory diet, the Mediterranean diet, even specific nutrients like turmeric and the omega-3 fatty acids that can help to tone down the inflammatory response in our body as well. So it's about having a look at the diet. Like I said, the Mediterranean diet or the anti-inflammatory diet are wonderful to help get this under control. And then looking at exercise. Yes, I know if you're already tired and you're feeling that you've got aches and pains all over the body, the last thing you want to do is to get moving. But starting slow and getting some exercise of some form, whether it be low to moderate exercise and building up slowly. Don't just go to the gym and hit it out. You'll actually increase your inflammation. But things like a gentle cycle, gentle walks, gentle swimming, to get the muscles moving will help in the long term to reduce your inflammatory load as well. And then ensuring that you do get rest and relaxation. And laughter. That helps along the way also, which is just fabulous. So scheduling that regular rest and recharge time. And then other things that you can do include fresh air and sunshine. Fresh air so that we're getting that fresh oxygen into our lungs, which can oxygenate our blood and help with chemical reactions. But also the sunlight has vitamin D. So with vitamin D, it affects 900 genes. And many of those genes are involved in the inflammatory reactions of the body. And like I said before, we can test for these genes as well. But that vitamin D affects 900 genes in general. So wouldn't you want to make sure that you're getting some vitamin D from regular fresh air and sunlight? And then doing stress management techniques so that if you do have high stress, to reduce that, because that can also exacerbate and create inflammatory responses as well. So if you have any form of disease, any form of chronic inflammation in the body, then these tips will help you to reduce your inflammation and help that you can start to conquer your disease and help to conquer your health as well, regain your health and vitality. So thank you for joining me today. I'm Teresa Todd, Conquering Health naturopath and biochemist, and I look so forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.